There is no shortage of anxiety advice. Think positive, breathe, exercise, cut out caffeine, journal, meditate. And yet most people who live with anxiety have tried several of these things, some of them repeatedly, and found them either ineffective, temporarily helpful, or simply too difficult to maintain when anxiety is actually happening. The problem is rarely with the tools themselves. Most of the well-known anxiety management techniques have genuine evidence behind them. The problem is that people use them without understanding why they work, which means they use them incorrectly, inconsistently, or only after the anxiety has already peaked, at which point the window for many cognitive tools has already closed. This video is about the mechanics, not just what to do, but why it works. Because understanding the mechanism is what converts a technique from something you try once into something you actually build into your life. The fastest evidence-based tool for reducing acute anxiety is the physiological sigh, a breathing pattern identified in Stanford research by Andrew Huberman and colleagues. The technique, a double inhale through the nose, a full inhale, then a second short, sharp inhale on top, followed by a long, slow exhale through the mouth. Repeat twice. Why it works? Alveoli, the tiny air sacs in the lungs, collapse under stress, reducing oxygen-carbon dioxide exchange efficiency. The double inhale reinflates them. The long exhale activates the vagus nerve, which signals the parasympathetic nervous system to reduce arousal. The result is a measurable reduction in heart rate and anxiety within seconds, faster than any other single breathing technique tested. The key instruction: learn this before you need it. When anxiety is already high, even simple instructions become hard to follow. Practice the physiological sigh several times today in a calm state. Then it will be available as a reflex when the spiral starts. Cognitive restructuring is the core tool of CBT, and it is frequently misunderstood as positive thinking. It is not. It is accuracy training. The goal is not to replace anxious thoughts with cheerful ones, but to replace distorted thoughts with realistic ones. The process has 3 steps. First, identify the thought. What is my anxious mind saying? Write it down if possible. Externalizing it reduces its authority. Second, examine the evidence. What actually supports this interpretation? What contradicts it? What is the realistic range of outcomes? Third, generate an alternative, not a positive spin, but an accurate restatement that accounts for all the evidence. This presentation is going to be a disaster becomes presentations are uncomfortable and this one might go badly, but I have prepared. I know the material, and even if it is not perfect, it is survivable. That is not optimism, it is accuracy. And accuracy, consistently practiced, begins to recalibrate the interpretive habits of the anxious brain. Exposure therapy is the most evidence-based treatment for anxiety disorders, and consistently, the one people are most reluctant to use, because it requires approaching rather than avoiding what you fear. The principle: gradual, systematic exposure to anxiety triggers, without performing safety or avoidance behaviors, until the anxiety naturally reduces. This process is called habituation. Exposure works because it provides the nervous system with direct experience that contradicts the threat prediction. Not reassurance, actual experience. When you stay in a feared situation until your anxiety reduces, your brain receives undeniable evidence. We predicted catastrophe. We survived. Update the threat database. Over repeated exposures, the anxiety associated with that trigger diminishes. Not immediately, but measurably. The most important instruction: exposure must be graduated. Start with situations that produce mild anxiety, not maximum anxiety. The goal is not to be flooded, it is to practice staying. and to let the anxiety complete its natural arc rather than escaping before it peaks. Cognitive diffusion, from acceptance and commitment therapy, is a complement to cognitive restructuring. Where restructuring asks you to change the content of thoughts, diffusion asks you to change your relationship with them, regardless of content. The core insight: you are not your thoughts, you are the one observing them. Practical diffusion techniques: instead of saying, "I am going to fail," say, "I notice I am having the thought that I am going to fail." Instead of engaging with the thought as fact, treat it as an event, a weather system passing through, not the climate itself. Another technique: name the story. There goes my not good enough story again. Naming the pattern, recognizing it as a recurring narrative rather than a fresh perception of reality, reduces its authority without requiring you to argue with it. Diffusion does not make difficult thoughts disappear, it makes them less sticky. And less sticky thoughts produce less sustained anxiety. If this series is helpful, please subscribe to Healing Through Thoughts. There are daily shorts all week on each of these tools. No psychological toolkit works reliably on a foundation of chronic sleep deprivation and physical inactivity. This is not motivational rhetoric, it is neuroscience. Sleep deprivation increases amygdala reactivity by up to 60%, according to research from Matthew Walker's lab. An underslept brain is measurably more anxious. The alarm fires more easily, and the prefrontal regulation that normally moderates it is less active. Consistent sleep is not optional for anxiety management, it is maintenance. Physical movement metabolizes stress hormones. Adrenaline and cortisol were designed to fuel action. They need to go somewhere. Aerobic exercise provides that completion of the stress cycle and consistently reduces both acute anxiety and baseline anxiety levels. The threshold is lower than most people think. 20 to 30 minutes of brisk walking 3 to 5 times per week produces measurable effects. The gym is optional, movement is not. These are not interesting additions to anxiety management. They are the foundations on which everything else sits. If sleep and movement are poor, the ceiling for psychological tools is significantly lower. The most counterintuitive tool in the anxiety toolkit is acceptance, and the most commonly misunderstood. Acceptance is not resignation. It is not deciding that anxiety is fine or that you enjoy it. It is a willingness to have anxiety present without fighting it, which, paradoxically, reduces its duration and intensity. Research on experiential avoidance shows that attempts to suppress or control internal experiences intensify them. The white bear problem. Try not to think of a white bear. Struggling against anxiety sends the brain a clear message. This experience is dangerous. More alarm is generated in response. Acceptance sends a different message. Anxiety is here. I do not have to enjoy it. I can let it be here and still do what matters to me. ACT's core question is not how do I reduce my anxiety, but what would I do if anxiety were allowed to come along? A meaningful life is not one in which anxiety is absent, it is one in which anxiety no longer makes decisions. That is an achievable goal. It is also a genuinely liberating one. A concrete starting point if you want to begin using these tools systematically rather than reactively. Morning, 2 minutes. Physiological sigh practice, 2 rounds of double inhale, long exhale. Not because you are anxious, but to build the skill before you need it. Also sets a calmer baseline for the morning. When anxiety spikes, first, body regulation, physiological sigh or box breathing. Then, if possible, name the thought and do 1 round of cognitive restructuring. Write it down if you can, even 3 sentences. Externalizing the thought reduces its authority. Weekly. Identify one avoidance behavior and approach the feared situation once. Start small. The goal is experience, not achievement. Evening. Phone away from the bedroom. Sleep is the most important maintenance tool available. Protect it as though it matters. Because neurologically, it is the single highest leverage intervention for baseline anxiety. None of these require perfection. They require repetition. The skill is not in doing them perfectly once, it is in returning to them consistently. The tools in this video are not quick fixes. There are no quick fixes for a nervous system that has spent years calibrated toward threat. What there are, what genuinely exists and what has decades of research behind it, are practices. Things that, done consistently, produce measurable change in how anxious your baseline nervous system is, how quickly you recover from anxiety spikes, and how much anxiety narrows or expands your life. The ceiling for improvement is high. People who have lived with debilitating anxiety for years, not weeks, build different relationships with it. Not relationships where anxiety never shows up, but where it shows up and they know what it is doing, and what they can do in response. That knowledge is the difference between anxiety as something that happens to you and anxiety as something you have genuine agency over. You have spent this week with Healing Through Thoughts, Understanding Anxiety, Series 3. The full series is on the channel. Pick one tool from this video. Use it every day for 1 week. Not all of them, one. The tool you use beats every tool you know but do not use. Thank you for being here.